Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode from a webinar of Constellateur. Before we get started, again, I would like to ask you kindly to please like, rate, share, and comment on the videos, both in the Facebook community as well as, of course, in YouTube. Because if we spread the word and we have more participants joining us, it's going to be even more interesting by having a lot of people asking questions and so on. My name is Tom Wittig, and I am happy to present the webinar today. Our topic is Who Belongs? This is a webinar in a series about the general theme of renewal and innovation. The topic today is to get into resonance with the issue of innovation and renewal or self-renewal. We are going to touch now the first of the three essential questions, and I will go through this step by step. And you have a chance to review the webinar later on YouTube channel or on Facebook and so on. So the question is, who belongs to it? First, it's important to acknowledge that no group whatsoever is a snapshot in time. It is always grounded and rooted in the past and everything that comes with it. So this applies to groups of family or a family group, for example, in couple relationships, but also it's important in organizations and companies. And the theme about renewal and innovation applies to many relationships in these areas, in family, organization, couples, and so on. The question is who or what actually belongs to the system. And we're talking here about all the current and the former stakeholders or members of a family. And often there are circumstances and even entanglements associated with that. And the other dimension, of course, is time, because we also need to consider who were the people in the past who are associated with the group that we are in right now, or the group of our partners in a certain relationship or in a certain setting. For example, in a job. It's not only about my direct colleagues and the employees, but it's also about their families and my family, of course, as well. Often we think that we bring issues home from work, but it works also the other way. We bring issues from home back into the workplace. So here we are connected in a system that is actually much wider than we often realize. And of course, there's the owner, and in many companies, there is the current owner and the past owner, as we will see in an example later on in this talk. And of course, the clients, the founders, and investors belong to us, but also in many cases, often it's about the people impacted by our work. And sometimes there is harm being done to people, and so that needs to be acknowledged as well. I want to share an example with you from a fairly recent work in systemic constellations, which actually is an example in the world of organizations. And I think it brought some very interesting insights for all the participants, and of course for the person who brought the issue to the Constellation seminar. And the situation, the starting point was that there was a leader in a new organization, fairly enthusiastic, and he was actually eager to go after the market and new opportunities. But then he was fairly frustrated. So as you can see here in this this documentation, and sometimes documenting the live seminars in this way, so to have let's say a bit of a memory of that. And what he shared with me was that his biggest worry was not so much that there wasn't an opportunity, but he was worried that he couldn't get the ideas out of people's heads onto the road, so to speak, into the market. And his biggest worry was, okay, how long is the opportunity in the market there? Can we afford it? And for how long? And this was actually a new leader in the organization and a new owner who took over the organization for not such a long time. And so the question was how to approach this topic and how to proceed. And what was interesting, actually, when we started the Constellation, the representatives who represented the people actually in the organization, they were almost frozen at their place. They were standing and looking all in one direction, almost as if they wanted to jump and leave the organization in the next moment. And then in the first step, I decided to put let's say the golden opportunity in front of the leader, because he was facing it and he was eager to reach out and grab the opportunity. But there was no movement. Even the two representatives who represented the opportunity or the customers, and here depicted as two yellow golden customers with a little diamond in front of them, they didn't move. They didn't even look at him and didn't regard him that much. So there was no movement. It was a gridlock for everybody. And even inside of these big opportunities, the employees couldn't care less. They looked into another direction. So it's certainly not a situation that an organization and a leader and the employees can be successful in. So the question is how to proceed. And before we go there, and I explain what we actually did in that particular constellation, I want to come back to the topic of the 3 essential questions, which I mentioned already in a previous webinar. So the topic that we are looking at today is really the question of who belongs to it, who belongs to the system, to the situation, or a certain difficulty in a system, in a given situation. And we need to ask, okay, who was there in the past also? So who belonged to the system and that we don't see at this point right now, and who or what needs to be acknowledged. And the other 2 related questions in this magical flower of innovation and renewal, if you want, are in the lower left-hand corner. It's the question, what is it about? What is the issue? What is really the issue behind this? And then the upper circle is about the question, whom does it serve? And I found that these are 3 really important cornerstones, especially in dealing with innovation topics. They also apply to many other situations, but of course every constellation and every group, every family, every setting is different. So they only provide us let's say a certain perspective on the system, and then we can work with that as a starting point. But every system unfolds obviously very different. And so the question is, what happens if these questions cannot be answered, to put it in simple terms? Well, if we don't know who belongs to it, and we don't know really what it is about that we are trying to address here, and what the change and the improvement is all about that we are looking for, and we can say we are running in circles, literally, and it's a waste of our time, because we're really acting out of context, and we haven't really understood and seen what the topic and what the entanglement is all about. And likewise, if we move to the other 2 circles, and if we don't understand, okay, who is it serving what we are doing here with the organization, in our jobs, in our industry, in our organization, or maybe any initiative that we take, it can have a very well-intended purpose and direction, but if it doesn't move, it's not going anywhere. It's not helping if we cannot answer this question: whom does it serve, and who belongs to it? So who needs to be engaged, who needs to be included in what we are doing, who needs to be seen and acknowledged. And so coming back to our example that I mentioned before, the question is always, how can renewal succeed? How can innovation be unleashed and move forward? And the question here in this example is what to do next if we have such a constellation which is in a gridlock and nobody can move. And so the people in the organization were looking in a certain direction. And what I actually did here as a next step was to put in a representative for the previous owner, shown here as the person on the right-hand side in green. And the people looked into that direction. So I went with that energy and I said, okay, there is something in this direction, and they're not looking left and right, they're looking right there. And so that actually was an interesting movement also for the participant and in the audience, because suddenly something happened and in the organization. And as it often happens in systemic constellations, and the movements are very slow, they don't happen rapidly, so we have to give it a lot of time and give it the room and time it needs. And so after a while, the leader of the new leader of the organization was actually moving towards and nudged towards the old owner, and he met him in a certain movement which articulated a respect and dignity. So we led him actually to face the previous owner, and it could be observed and felt and experienced already for everybody, not only the representatives in the constellation, but the people in the audience, that this was already a certain relief. But nothing really happened in the organization. It was just an acknowledgement, basically a breathing in the organization, if you want. But only at the time when the previous owner was giving the blessing, and the new owner was moving slowly and very carefully to the previous owner. And once they were in touch with each other and the previous owner was seen and acknowledged, a certain movement started. And the movement actually led to the people opening up again, surprisingly, into two groups in the constellation. So this is how it unfolded during the work. And one group was actually surrounding the new owner and standing by him. And it wasn't really clear if they were watching him and regarding him in a certain way, but also there to support him. And he actually had nothing to do. So he could just let the people go ahead and do the job, and the other group actually turned towards the opportunity, towards the customers, and was there and regarding them with attention and in a very certain serving spirit, if you want. So from the leadership perspective, for him that was an easier job, because he could just let the people do the jobs. And that's what we often find in leadership jobs. If the eager new manager can just ease out a little bit and let things unfold and happen, and sees the people, especially who were there before, and sometimes it can be a previous owner or let's say people who were there before, or the people with the most seniority in the organization, then things can unfold again. So that was very relieving and interesting to see. But it also reminds us that sometimes especially when we are working in organizations, and it seems like we are trying to find our way and maneuvering through the boxes on the org chart. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and we don't see what we don't see. So it's helpful and in a certain way healing also to work with this kind of setting and family and systemic constellation to reveal the hidden dynamics that prevent us from moving forward. And oftentimes we try to do the opposite and just run faster and hurry faster. And the faster we run, the further we move away from our target. So to recap some of the insights that came out of this particular piece of work that we did was, first of all, it was almost a freeing movement for the organization, and the people could move forward again. Now, I should say that, of course, the participants in this seminar were not from the organization. Only the leader was from the particular organization. But the movement actually that we experienced there gave an indication of where to look for a solution and where to start. And oftentimes, as it happens in the organization, then it unfolds. And we have often people coming back after a certain period of time back into another seminar, and they say, you would not believe what happened. But after a time, the whole thing changed, the whole company changed. And in fact, in this seminar, another participant said, came forward when we did the feedback round, and she said that this was exactly what was happened also in her company. And this is another interesting fact, that oftentimes the issue that is brought forward is affecting many people, not because it's a common issue, but sometimes it appears that people are magically drawn into this field, and it's not that they find the constellation, but the constellation is finding them. So indeed, it's a very interesting way of working and a very revealing way of working that is touching many people. And so the key questions, just to wrap that up again, are who belongs to and into the system. So who needs to be maybe even brought back into a system? Who was moved out? Who was cancelled out or ruled out? And oftentimes we see that if somebody or a group of people is being pushed out or ruled out of a system, of a family or an entire organization, then somebody in the family or in the organization, in the group, is acting in weird ways. And that's an indicator. And these are the people who then, of course, need the most love and attention. And a good advice also that is very relevant for leaders and managers who take on a new organization is to first see who was there before. And what that means in practice is often that the new leader should go first to the people who were the longest in the organization, the longest in the company, or maybe even were former founders of the company. That is the starting point, and not coming in and trying to turn everything upside down at this point. And last but not least, the key question is who and what needs to be seen and acknowledged first before any movement of renewal and innovation can go forward. There is some related material to this. Based on these works, I put together a very short, it's kind of a mini course if you want. It comes as a mini course and also as a small booklet. And it's called 3 Essential Meditations for Innovation and Renewal. So it has the title, What Moves Renewal? You can find this if you search on our website, constellation.wittigonia.net, or if you go into the academy, the online academy, it's called academy.wittigonia.com. You will find it if you scroll down there a little bit. So before I go into the Q&A, which is always the fun part of the webinar, and that's where we can exchange some of the experience, and also I'd be happy to take some questions. I would like to ask you again to subscribe to this channel if you like it, If you didn't like it, okay, don't subscribe to it. But if you like it, subscribe, and then you get notifications. And if you want to have information about upcoming seminars or webinars, in this case, just join the mailing list. You see the web URL here. It's bit.ly/Constellateur _ webinar, and then you will be notified about future iterations. Now, if you would like to suggest a topic between the seminars or even a seminar location, or you would like to host a talk, host a constellation work, please feel free to reach out. The email address is constellations@wittigonia.net, so Constellations with an S. And you can reach us on these different social networks, in YouTube, Facebook, etc. In Facebook, there are actually a couple of things. One is the Constellateur page, and the other one is the Renewal seminar, which is specific about this topic here. All right. For questions, for Q&A, feel free to send in questions. I usually have a small questionnaire before the webinar starts. So if you fill that out when you register, then I get a good impression about what the current topics are, and they're changing over time. You can also ask live here in the webinar, or between webinars, just go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Constellateur, and there you can submit some feedback and questions. Okay, so now we are here. Be happy as always to take a few minutes of live questions if you want. Let me see what came in here in the email before actually the webinar. I had a couple of questions here. So one attendee from the previous webinar said, okay, she said, I'm very eager to learn about the concept. When are we covering all the questions? Well, the first one, we made a first step today. So that was the question about who belongs to the system, and the others will unfold as we go forward. So there are 2 more to go. And of course, that's only the beginning. There are many more facets of this whole topic. So please stay tuned, and I'll do my best to come forward with the new topics. Just attend the webinar or watch the replay or join one of the live webinars that we are offering, mainly in the European area, but also happy to take on webinars in other locations, seminars in other locations. Okay, there is a question here about a founder from a startup. I have founded a startup, and it is so hard to find customers and investors, and where do I start? Well, this is a very common question. We usually call this the chicken and egg problem, and it starts with you have an idea, you want to put it in practice. You talk to a person who supposed to be your investor, or you're asking for an investment, and he or she might say, okay, if you have a customer, then come back and I will be happy to look at it. Then you go to the customer, and he or she would say, okay, if you have a product or an investor into your product, then I'd be happy to take a look at it. So that's the chicken and egg. Now, sometimes it requires a little bit of strike of genius to pull yourself out of this situation. But really the question is, if you feel into the situation, what is the starting point? Yeah, and often what we find is it's not about money, it's not about the technology. It's really about finding the sweet spot for the purpose of what you want to do. So it's about whom does it serve, right? Oftentimes I find that especially when working with startups, there are certain patterns that prevent people from moving forward. One is actually that the founders are so much in love with their idea or sometimes even technology that they don't look left and right and ask the question, whom does it serve? We'll certainly come back to that question in a future webinar. The other key movement that I often see is that some new founders, and in the new economy, some founders are looking for the big money and big investors also, and they seem to be kind of addicted to funding, to investors. That's not a healthy situation, as it turns out very often. Now, sometimes, of course, you need to have investment in order to make something go forward, but it always has to be in the context of the other questions that we discuss here. Okay, there's one question here about seminar schedule. There is a seminar schedule on the website if you want to take a look at that. If you want to suggest something, send email to constellations@wittigonia.net. Very different question here from somebody saying, I am not in retirement, but I have about 10 years to go, but I was recently let go from a company. And the question is, how do I move forward now? Well, that's a very deep, very rich question, of course, and one would need to understand the personal circumstances. But I would encourage you to, if you are in this kind of situation, is first of all to take your time. What I find is often I get a lot of questions from people who have had a very fulfilling and rich career and who pushed it very hard in the career, and then they come to a point where suddenly there's a fundamental change. And first of all, I advise them to just take the time. And if you have worked let's say 10 years very intensively in your job or in your profession and in your calling, then give it some time. And my rule of thumb is for every 10 years, take a year off and do a sabbatical and enjoy if you can afford it. And then the question at some point in time comes, okay, what do I want to do? And what we find more and more, that it's not about the job, it's more about meaning. It's about purpose and doing something. And this resonates very well with one of the questions that we discuss here, the question about whom does it serve? So again, take your time and also look into the meditations that I provided, the guided meditations. I had several people coming back actually after they listened to it, and they said, I saw something very different. And not something actually I wanted to see and I wanted to go for, but something very different. So I'm a little bit surprised, but it gave me a new direction, and that's really what it is all about. So to find your personal way and to find your path so that you can go forward. Well, okay, I think that's pretty much it for today. There might be some more questions. Feel free to reach out again via our contacts or post a question into the Facebook group, and I'd be happy to take a look at it. And if it's a topic that is interesting for many people, then I'd be happy also to make it a topic in one of the upcoming webinars and expand on that a little bit more in detail. So thank you again. And as always, I wish you good luck with your innovation and renewal. Goodbye.